Today I read chapter 30, which is the law of miracles in Paramahansa Yogananda's famous book, Autobiography of a Yogi. And, famously, the book has all kinds of crazy miracles that are pretty hard to believe, quite frankly, because the miracles that Paramahansa claims to have witnessed or been part of, or at least have secondhand knowledge of, make even the miracles in the Gospels look like nothing. People, their arms fall off and then they just pick it up and put it back on their arm, or people like crawling out of the earth and coming back to the dead, all kinds of crazy stuff, having more than one body at a time. And in chapter 30, he talks about the metaphysics and the physics that he understands of what makes these things possible and what's going on. So essentially, the world that you know is Maya. That translates as illusion, but that's not a perfect translation, though. And then the Maya, which is the phenomenal world that you see, is sort of laid on top of the real world, which is Brahman, pure consciousness. Now, I'm going to put this the way I understand it, is that, Brahman, it's really not this metaphysical, mysterious thing. It is just your experience, your consciousness. The fact that you are conscious, the fact that you are experiencing, right? Independent of content, and that's the important part. When you imagine your life, your subjective lived life, completely independent of the content of your life, even to the point of being independent of who you are, or your base level emotions, or the base level of how you think things work, that's the ground. That's Brahman. So as a real world kinds of example, if we look at a piano, I'm experiencing a piano keyboard. Well, what is that? First of all, it's in my experience, right? So it's a conscious experience. And I say that it's a piano. In this case, it's actually a MIDI keyboard because it's electronic. But I see a bunch of white keys that are, about that long. I also see black keys, that are about that long. The black keys against the white keys go in a pattern of 2, then a gap, then 3, then a gap, then 2. And when we see that pattern, we call it we call it a piano. So it is a pattern across the substrate of consciousness, which is simply your life. If and you can call it Brahman if you want to get all whatever, big about it. But it might be better just to be like, it's a pattern in my experience that I call piano, period. Okay, so the enlightened master realizes that the piano is not independent of him all of the time. And he doesn't have to even meditate to understand that. That's literally the master's worldview as soon as he wakes up until he goes to sleep, or even during sleep. And because of that, the enlightened master identifies not with the ego within the field, but with the entire field, the entire phenomenal field. So when I was thinking about this, I should say when I was meditating on this, after having read the chapter of Yogananda's chapter, a thought popped in my mind as I was meditating, that every pixel of reality is really a verb. Meaning, pixel being a metaphor for the individual parts of your experience, the same way that there's pixels on a screen. And that the idea that each of the content of each of those pixels is being beamed to you from an external source, that's only on the surface level. That's the narrative that's going on within Maya, right? That's just the waves across the ocean. It's not to say it's not real, but it's not high level. It's not fundamentally real. The deeper truth is that Brahman, God, is creatively deciding on the content of every single pixel. And then all those pixels that are creatively decided upon moment to moment to moment combine to create the patterns of our lives. So that some kind of a miracle, somebody walking on water or levitating off the earth, isn't really a particular exception. Within the narrative of Maya, it's an exception because it's breaking the rules of physics. But the rules of physics themselves are just part of the Maya content. It's just a habit of God. And just as I drink coffee every day, it's a habit, right? And I feel an impulse to drink coffee every morning. It's my default behavior, so I do it a lot. But if I feel like not drinking coffee, it's not a big deal. Personally, I don't even get a headache. It's not a big deal at all, and I do it on a regular basis. I'm completely free to either drink coffee or not drink coffee every single day. Usually I do, sometimes I don't. The law of miracles that Yogananda is proposing is that the entire universe is like this. It is simply a habit. The patterns that we see and that we interpret as physical laws, like Newtonian laws, are really just creative habits. They're the default behavior of God, which really, that's a very high and mighty word. It might not work well. It's just your experience. Your experience itself has these patterns, but it can break them at any time. God is an artist and can do whatever he wants. The parapsychologist Rupert Sheldrake has an idea called morphic fields, where he goes into this idea in more depth, sort of scientifically. His basic idea is that the physical laws that physicists study, particularly the high-level Newtonian laws, are literally habits that the universe has gained, just like a person gains habits. But that there isn't some kind, the laws themselves are not low-level structures. They're just patterns that happen to happen, today, and tomorrow they might be different. I like this idea. And I like looking at it in the world and thinking that it's a performance piece happening all of the time that the great artist is creating. And just as most artists, when they create a piece, there are consistent patterns that make the piece coherent. But if a painter spends all day making a detailed painting of a barn next to a tree, that doesn't mean that the patterns within the painting actually have any power. The painter could always just splatter red paint and cover the whole thing if they want. They're always completely free. And just because that the painter usually doesn't decide to do that does not mean that there was some kind of internal laws with that barn and that sun and that, like, those trees. That is not the case. That's what we call Maya. The idea that those laws have some kind of power. The creation doesn't have any power over the creator. Although watch out for that dualistic thinking. Because ultimately non-dual thinking is usually better when we're talking about metaphysics. There's just one thing. It is creator and creation, and it is freely making creative decisions as it goes. And if in a particular situation, it wants some meditator in the Himalayas to levitate, it can just do it. That's how free it is.